Welcome to Canadian Coffee House Crime. My name is Catherine, and welcome to the Halloween special. And today's case takes us to Quebec. Quebec City is the capital city of the Canadian province of Quebec. The Algonquin indigenous people named the area Quebec, which is an Algonquin word meaning where the river narrows. Quebec City is one of the oldest European settlements in North America. The city was built on the north bank of the St. Lawrence River. It has a population of about 550,000 residents. The majority are native French-speaking speakers. The provincial government is the largest employer in the city. The Quebec Nordiques were a part of the National Hockey League from 1979 to 1995. But the team moved to Denver, Colorado in 1995, becoming the Colorado Avalanche. I previously did another case from this area of Quebec called The Count of Frontenac, one of my favorites. Check it out. On October 31st, 2020, an attack unfolded at about 10:30 p.m. Saturday in the historic Old Quebec neighborhood near the Parliament Building. A 24-year-old man was arrested after he allegedly dressed in a medieval costume and used a samurai sword to randomly attack 7 people, killing 2, François Duchesne, 56, a museum employee, and Suzanne Clermont, 61, a hairdresser. The 5 victims who survived the attack all suffered non-life-threatening wounds. Carl Girouard was born in 1996 and lived in Sainte-Therese, Quebec, near Montreal, with his mother, Monique Delfront, who said that her son had had behavioral and mental issues since childhood. Carl started acting inappropriately as early as kindergarten, when he got into trouble for chasing older girls at school and trying to kiss them. He was cited for inappropriate behavior at the beginning of elementary school. A child psychologist intervened and Carl was medicated for a time. Here is a violent drawing Carl made for his dad's new partner when he was about 11 years old. His notion of an alternative reality started in high school when he was about 15, and Carl started to play video games that involved violence, fighting, swords, and medieval settings. He became obsessed with video games in his teens, particularly ones involving swords and knives. He started to mix up reality and video games. He said he remembers telling himself that we should live like in video games. By the time he turned 18, he had become obsessed with an urge to complete a top-secret mission, one that required him to kill people and that his life would be sacrificed at the end of it. To Carl, the mission was of the utmost importance. It had to be accomplished at all cost. It wasn't a desire, it was a duty. His goal was to create chaos, change the world, and encourage like-minded people, whom he called his alter egos, to continue his objective. He felt torn between 2 personalities, 2 Carls in his head, one real and one on a mission. He didn't like the modern world, that there were too many cars, people didn't say hi to each other, and everyone was forced to dress to conform. He was antisocial and didn't have any friends or hobbies throughout his youth, and he preferred playing video games such as Call of Duty Warzone instead. Carl started developing an interest in katana swords and samurai costumes in 2014. When he turned 18, he was able to get a credit card to purchase them. Carl told his mother that it was all part of a collection. She had said, "For sure I was worried, but it was his only interest," and that she didn't try to stop it because he looked happy. At one point, she noticed Carl would talk alone in his shower, and he would laugh alone, but when she would ask him who he was speaking to, he would go silent. Carl would describe himself as two different people, one who went to work and lived in the real world, and another who was mission-focused. Carl admitted, although, to understanding that his plan was illegal as early as 2015, when he confided in his former social worker that he wanted to modify it because he was scared of going to prison. He had confirmed that he understood that attacking someone with a sword could hurt them. Obsession with his plan caused him to quit jobs frequently when he felt his colleagues were trying to get to know him. He said he avoided close relationships in order to remain focused on his objective. He had no real friends, girlfriend, or social life. After the COVID-19 pandemic hit, he quit his job and played video games. Carl moved out in 2019. On October 31st, 2020, Carl, a tall, thin man with dark hair, had a plan that involved killing his family and setting their home on fire. Police had found gas canisters in his car. He didn't go through with it, although he then premeditated an attack in Quebec City. He thought the attack had to take place on Halloween because there would be a full moon, and he chose Old Quebec because of its historic buildings and statues reminded him of the medieval video games he adored. He felt the setting was right to send a message. He put on a costume, wearing black jogging pants, black leather boots, a short-sleeved kimono, and a black mask. Carl drove 155 miles from his home on the north shore of Montreal to Quebec City with the intention of doing as much damage as possible. He parked his car in front of the Chateau Frontenac, found in the area where the attacks occurred. He acted alone and no evidence was uncovered linking him to any terrorist groups. His motivations were personal. Carl was suffering from a mental crisis. He brought with him a katana, a Japanese samurai sword with a 76.9 centimeter blade. When he arrived in Quebec City, he thought he didn't want to go ahead with this plan, but felt he had no choice. The killings were his duty. He felt he was going against his will, although he didn't want to hurt people, but he felt he had to. He felt controlled by the mission that he thought he had. Carl's original plan was to attack people inside the Chateau Frontenac Hotel in the historic Old Quebec neighborhood district of the French-speaking provincial capital. Finding the door locked, he left for a while before returning and attacking people in the streets near the hotel. He had to force himself to feel angry to act, but the anger only really kicked in once he failed to kill his first victim, Remy Belanger. After Susan Clement's killing, although he began to question his actions, he started to understanding what he had done and regretting his actions. He thought he would have a feeling of accomplishment, but that wasn't the case. Carl thought he was failing what he was supposed to succeed in doing. This thought, although, drove him to attack a group of young men, and he killed François Deschnes, his second victim. As he hid from the police, he asked himself repeatedly why he had done it and what was the logic in doing it, but it was already too late. Ambulance crews rushed to the scene to treat the victims as police mobilized a manhunt. Police were contacted about 10:30 p.m. and discovered victims in at least 4 locations, including near the Chateau Frontenac Hotel on du Trésor Street and on des Remparts Street after a 2.5-hour manhunt. Carl was arrested shortly before 1 a.m., about 1 kilometer north of the area in the city's Old Port, where security officers spotted him and contacted the police. Carl was arrested near the East Space 400E building business park on Abraham Martin Street. He was lying on the ground, barefoot and hypothermic, when he was arrested. He surrendered to police without any resistance. Carl was described as calm, cooperative after the arrest. Following his arrest, Carl was taken to the hospital for evaluation. Police started investigating 25 different crime scenes and made the press statement of that this is one of the safest cities in the world and it's difficult, almost impossible to predict the consequences of the insanity here that's visibly coming from mental health problems. Carl was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths on October 31st, 2020, and charged with 5 counts of attempted murder. Carl admitted to killing Deschênes and Clermont and injuring 5 others, but his lawyer argued he was not criminally responsible at the time of the events because he was suffering from a mental disorder. The first witness for the defense was Carl's mother. Delphont told the court she first heard of her son's plan when police knocked on her door after the attacks. Wearing a white shirt and shackles on his ankles and wrists, Carl took the stand in the morning shortly after his mother's testimony. Monique Delphont, Carl's mother, teared up a few times as she testified and then listened to her son's recount his story in court. She cried as her son described the attacks. Carl said that his life before the attacks was one where he kept distance from others, rarely staying in the same job for long, not dating. Carl stated, "I needed to kill people in my mission, and the idea of that made it uncomfortable for me to get close to people." Carl did not have a criminal history. This picture of Carl Girouard's bedroom, taken by Quebec Provincial Police on November 1st, 2020, shows the so-called symbol of chaos that Girouard drew on his mirror the day of the attacks, and the sword that he planted in his mattress. Carl was found guilty and was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. In addition to the 2 life sentences, Carl was also handed concurrent 10-year sentences for the attempted murder convictions. Carl will not be eligible for parole before October 31st, 2045. The province of Quebec issued a $100 million mental health funding announcement in wake of the sword attack. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Catherine, and this is Canadian Coffeehouse Crime, video number 38 on October 27th, 2023. Please feel free to press the like button as it helps with my exposure, and subscribe to my channel. I try to put out a new video every week. See you in the next case.